You don't eat this before bed, and that's why your eyesight is getting worse. Not because of age, not because it's the same for everyone, but because every evening you deprive your vision of what it simply cannot recover without. It sounds harsh, but it's honest. I'm saying this bluntly because too many people make the same mistake for years and then wonder why their glasses get stronger, the light irritates them, and the letters blur by evening. The most dangerous thing here is the belief that vision will fade on its own, like 50, whatever you want. But I want you to understand one simple thing. Eyes are living tissue, and they either receive nourishment and restoration, or they slowly deteriorate. There is no third option, and this can't be resolved during the day, or at the pharmacy, or at the ophthalmologist's office. This is resolved in the evening, or rather, by what you put into your body before bed. Most people eat in the evening not for health, but out of habit. They eat whatever's quicker, whatever's easier, whatever ... to avoid. Bread, sweets, tea. Sometimes nothing at all, and then sleep. And it's precisely at this moment that vision is left with nothing, because at night the eyes recover, cells are renewed, and the nutrition of the optic nerve improves, but only if there's something to do this from. If not, the body chooses what to save first. And the eyes, alas, are not at the top of this list. I've seen this dozens of times. People are smart, careful, disciplined, do eye exercises, buy good glasses, limit their screen time. Everything is correct, but vision still blurs. And when we calmly, without fanaticism, analyze the evening, we almost always find a void, either food, which interferes with recovery, or its absence. And as soon as this moment changes, people begin to feel the difference, not immediately, not abruptly, but distinctly. Eyes become less tired, evening vision becomes calmer, the gritty feeling disappears, tension dissipates more quickly. It's important not to deceive yourself here. It's not about overeating before bed or some exotic foods, it's about a specific nutritional element that works specifically at night and specifically on vision. Almost no one takes it seriously because it seems too simple, but in vain. It's precisely these simple things that often turn out to be the most effective, especially after 50, when the body no longer forgives carelessness. I was right to start so abruptly because the truth is that vision rarely declines. Suddenly, it goes quietly year after year until a person gets used to seeing worse and considers it normal, and then it's more difficult to get it back. But while your eyes are still reacting, while you're reading this text and catching yourself thinking that yes, it looks like there's still time, and that's good news, at the end, I'll definitely mention the most important point, which isn't mentioned in either advertising or popular advice. This is why even the right products sometimes don't work. Most people simply do everything at the wrong time and in the wrong combination, and that's why they get disappointed. This point puts a lot of things into perspective, and I'll definitely return to it. If you want to maintain clarity of vision, not on paper but in real life, support this conversation with a like. This way it will reach those who need to hear it, especially now, and subscribe if you appreciate a calm, honest conversation without intimidation or empty promises. And then I'll tell you about the first evening element, which gently, without pressure, begins to restore the eye's ability to see more clearly, especially at dusk and in the evening. When the body is quiet in the evening, not externally but internally, the most delicate work begins. Blood pressure drops, the pulse slows, the brain gradually releases the stress of the day, and it is at this moment that the visual system stops working and begins to recover. This is a fundamental difference that many don't understand. During the day, the eyes expend resources. At night, they either replenish them or remain in deficit, and here comes the first element, without which this process simply doesn't start. We're talking about a simple, affordable product, which many consider frivolous and therefore ignore. I'm talking about regular cottage cheese, but not just any kind. In mature age, it becomes a nighttime ally of vision. Why? Because it contains something that directly nourishes the eye tissue and optic nerve during sleep: slow protein, calcium, and amino acids involved in vascular wall restoration. The eyes are one of the most vascular-dependent organs. Small capillaries, delicate structures, are sensitive to the slightest nutrition deficiency. With age, blood flow in them deteriorates, and if the body has nothing to repair these areas at night, it doesn't do so. A small amount of cottage cheese before bed provides the body with building material, not empty energy. It doesn't stimulate, doesn't overload the pancreas, and doesn't interfere with sleep, and at the same time it works for several hours at a time. I often give the same example. A 58-year-old woman, an accountant, In the evening, her eyes were drooping, dry, her vision felt like it was in a fog. She didn't believe food could have any effect on this. We agreed on a simple experiment. No fanaticism, for 5 spoons of cottage cheese an hour before bed, without sugar, without jam, without liver. After 10 days, she said, in the evening, my eyes became calmer, not perfect, not young, calmer, and this is the first and most important sign of recovery. It's not magic that's at work here, but physiology. During sleep, recovery hormones are produced more actively. Tissue regeneration is enhanced, but if there are no amino acids in the blood, the process goes to waste. Those organs that were already starved to death suffer especially, the eyes being the first to suffer. That's why so often people notice a deterioration after 50. Reserves are depleted, but habits remain the same. It's important to understand one thing: this isn't about a heavy dinner, this isn't about overeating at night, it's a small evening anchor that signals the body, it's time to repair itself. 100120G is more than enough. Ideally, 60-90 minutes before bed. If you have stomach problems, you can add a spoonful of natural yogurt or a little warm water. This way, absorption is smoother, and this is where I always emphasize: try. Not just once, but 7 evenings in a row. Don't judge the effect by one day. Eyes are not buttons. They respond gradually. First, the evening tension subsides, then the dryness lessens, then you feel like it's become easier to see. These are subtle signals, but they are very honest, and yet one product is not enough if you don't consider another factor which is almost imperceptible but can either enhance this effect or completely nullify it. Most people screw up here without even realizing it. This nuance is usually not discussed because it seems unimportant, but in reality, it determines half the result. And here we come to the point where everything falls apart for many, even if the product is chosen correctly. The person seems to try hard, make some changes, but there's no effect, so he decides it's nonsense. In fact, he simply hasn't removed what's silently blocking eye recovery every night. This is about evening magnesium deficiency. I'm deliberately not talking about pills right away, but about the condition. After 50, magnesium levels in most people are at the lower limit of normal or below, even if their test results are acceptable, and vision without magnesium is like a lamp with poor contact. It seems to shine, but dimly and unstable. Magnesium is needed not for alertness, but to relax blood vessels, to nourish the optic nerve, to relieve nighttime spasms that we don't even notice during the day. What happens in the evening for the average person? Fatigue, tension, news, the phone, screen light, the nervous system is overstimulated, blood vessels are constricted, and even if you've eaten the right foods, the blood simply doesn't deliver nutrition to the eyes in the right amount. Magnesium in this sense is like a key that opens access. Without it, recovery is half-hearted. I often explain this with a simple metaphor. Imagine you've delivered building materials to your house, but the gate is closed. The materials are there, but there's no use. Magnesium is precisely that gate. It relieves internal tension, improves microcirculation, induces deeper sleep, and deep sleep is the time when the eyes truly recover. In my practice, I've seen a typical picture: a 62-year-old man, a long-time driver. Complaints included poor vision in twilight, dazzling headlights, and rapid eye fatigue. We had gotten his diet in order, but the real shift occurred when he added a simple evening nutrient, magnesium in a soft form 30-40 minutes before bed. After 2 weeks, he said, "At night my eyes seem to rest, and in the morning it's easier to see." This is a very accurate description. The eyes truly begin to rest and not just switch off. It's important to emphasize that not any magnesium and not at any time. For the evening, calmer forms, glycinate, citrate, in small doses are suitable. Not in the morning, nor during the day, but closer to bedtime, and not as a stimulus, but as a signal to the body. It's time to relax. If you don't want supplements, you can get some magnesium from food: pumpkin seeds, buckwheat, warm cocoa without sugar. But in adulthood, this is often not enough, and here a supplement may be appropriate. There is another point that is rarely considered. Magnesium does not work well if you eat sweets in the evening, even a little. Sugar dramatically changes hormonal levels, and magnesium simply doesn't do its job. Therefore, if you want to help your eyes, the evening should be calm not only in mood but also in taste. No candy, cookies, or tea with anything. I usually advise taking a simple step for 7 evenings in a row, without expecting miracles, without constant judgment, just giving your body the conditions. most people by the end of the week notice that their sleep is getting deeper and their eyes are less strained. This isn't a placebo effect. It's normal physiology that has simply been blocked for a long time. And yet there's another element that almost no one thinks about because it's not on a plate or sold in a can. It either enhances everything we're talking about or nullifies the results, even with proper nutrition and supplements. And this is precisely where the very mistake that causes so many disappointments lurks. Now comes the quietest but most insidious moment. Almost no one notices it, does not connect with vision, although it is precisely this that often negates all efforts. Whose issue is evening light, not vision as a function, but the conditions under which the eyes have a chance to recover. The human eye is not just a lens and a retina. It's part of the nervous system, and if the brain doesn't recognize that night is coming, no amount of nutrition, no amount of magnesium will trigger full recovery. I'm talking about cold, bright light. Screens, white lamps, a TV in the dark. For the brain, this is a signal of alarm, not rest. It keeps blood vessels in tension, inhibits the production of melatonin, and literally prevents the eyes from repairing themselves. I often see the same picture. A person does everything right, a light dinner, the right foods, supplements, but then stares at their phone or sits under bright overhead lights until the very last moment. The result is shallow sleep, eyes are heavy in the morning, and fatigue returns in the evening, and the person doesn't understand what the error is. The error is that the visual system never received the command, you can switch off. There is a simple physiological fact: in dim light, the pupil dilates, the blood vessels in the eyes relax, and internal activity decreases. This is the beginning of recovery, but if light struck at the eyes until sleep, this mechanism does not activate. Moreover, cold light increases dryness of the eyes and sensitivity to glare, especially after 50. One of my patients put it very succinctly: before I would go to bed and my eyes would still work. We simply changed the evening light, a warm lamp, a floor lamp instead of a ceiling lamp, only use a yellow filter on your phone screen, and no later than half an hour before bed. After a few days, he noticed that his eyes began to let go of the day more quickly. This sensation is difficult to describe, but it is immediately recognized by those who experience it. I'm not calling for radical measures. You don't need to sit in the dark, simply dim the evening. The light should be warm, soft, and not glare in your eyes. The TV shouldn't be in complete darkness, but with side lighting. The phone should be a tool, not a light source in front of your face. These are small things, but it is from them that recovery comes together. And here an interesting thing happens. When the light becomes softer, magnesium works better, sleep deepens, nutrition begins to reach the tissues, everything we talked about suddenly comes together into a single system, and the eyes begin to respond, not abruptly, not suddenly, but calmly, as if remembering how to see without strain. I always suggest one simple experiment. For 700 evenings in a row, make the evening quieter. Light, screens, rhythm. By the end of the week, most people say their eyes are less tired in the evening and their morning vision becomes clearer. It's not a miracle. It's a return to normal physiology, but there's one more thing. It's not directly related to food or light or supplements. It's related to how exactly you fall asleep, and herein lies the very key I spoke of at the very beginning. Many do everything correctly, but it's precisely this point that deprives them of results. Now we've reached the most important point, the very point that almost no one talks about, but without which everything else works at half capacity. I've deliberately led you to it gradually, because if I tell you about it right away, most simply won't believe it, and that's a shame. I'm talking about breathing before sleep, not about meditation, not about complicated techniques, but about how exactly you breathe in the last minutes before falling asleep. This directly affects vision because the optic nerve is part of the brain, and the brain is more sensitive to oxygen and carbon dioxide than any other organ. When a person falls asleep tense, with shallow breathing and thoughts racing through their head, one thing happens: carbon dioxide levels drop and blood vessels constrict. This is a well-known physiological fact. This affects the blood vessels in the brain and eyes as well, and everything you did in the evening, your nutrition, magnesium, and light, ends up in poorly delivered conditions. The eyes simply don't receive what they're supposed to. I've seen this over and over again. People say I'm kind of sleeping, but I'm not resting, and vision doesn't improve even if everything else is done correctly, because there's sleep but no recovery. And recovery begins not when you're already asleep, but when you enter sleep. There's a very simple technique that I recommend to almost everyone over 50. It takes less than 3 minutes and requires no preparation. Lying in bed, with the lights off, place one hand on your stomach and simply inhale slowly through your nose, not into your chest, but into your stomach. Then exhale just as slowly, slightly longer than the inhalation. Without effort, without counting, just gently. After 6 to 8 such cycles, the blood vessels begin to dilate, the pressure inside the head decreases, and the optic nerve receives a signal: it's time to rest. This isn't psychology, it's physiology. With this extended exhalation, the parasympathetic nervous system is activated, the one responsible for restoration. It's at this point that the real night work begins. The eyes stop being on duty and go into repair mode. One woman, aged 61, told me a phrase that I remember well: I feel. For the first time in many years,